All right. Hello. Welcome. This is a UAP Society live stream, kind of a pickup game here where I really am investigating the UFOs over Ukraine. That was the UAP captures by the main astronomical observatory in Kyiv. And Avi Loab has come out with some pretty inflammatory remarks against that. Says it basically is all debunked. It's basically just artillery shells. But then Avi has come up against some, basically he's getting shot at, he says, from Mick West and the debunkers out there. Very interesting case. I think we can all learn from. I think everyone in this can actually learn from this engagement. So I have brought on Richard Hopf. Richard Hopf, let's bring him on now. He is the founder and works every day of his life, I believe, on Sky360. So bringing Sky360 is our partner organization, or at least who we're supporting to fruition. So thank you, Richard, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Chris.
Yes, hi. Always happy to have you on, man. And, you know, the community is dying for updates always on Sky360. You know, that's really our main thrust now for the NFTs. And before we get started, we were having an interesting discussion. Richard, you asked, what is this background, you know, that I'm using behind me, you know? And I was explaining, and then we went in for many minutes about UAP Society. This background image was made by one of our UAP ambassadors, David. He's a graphic designer. And the point is to create a location, a physical location in people's minds for the actual UAP Society, to give them an idea of what the actual metaverse will be. You know, and I was talking to you, Richard, I was basically making the argument that we're already in the metaverse, right? If you think about it. You know, I'm not talking to you in real life. You know, I'm talking to you through a computer system across how many thousands of miles, who knows? We have 11 people now who are just watching us, okay, from all around the world. So we're already in the metaverse, okay? We're already communicating digitally. Like if you walk around outside, everybody's like this, right? They're basically already in the metaverse. I hate to break this to everybody. So basically what is the metaverse is what we're trying to, I guess, create or show people what it would be like. And we have here is the actual inside. So this is the outside of the UAP Society. And what you have is it's a moon base, okay? And it's a location in a dangerous area, okay? So there's a lot of confusion out there. Nobody really knows what's going on. If you look behind me, you know, there's all these crazy stuff going on, but there's this nice, comfortable place called the UAP Society, okay? This provides basically a safe location where explorers, people out there who don't know what's going on, can now come to this location and meet with other like-minded people, you know. So it's like it gives a mental idea of a place to go. So people are out there, they want to know, right? And it adds some curiousness, like what is in here, okay? And you can see one of our NFTs. Actually, if you zoom in on the main image, you can see here we have ships. Actually, it's pretty cool. So let's show the inside now. Okay, also made by David. So this would be actually the inside of the UAP Society. Okay, so the inside of the moon base, and we called this actually MoonBase. And so for this we modeled our Discord after this. So I imagine our Discord is it's like a UAP Society metaverse version 1. You know, you go in, it's kind of looks weird. It's 2-dimensional. It's not that cool, but we wanted to mirror it off of this. So you basically have your main lounge area. So anyone can come here, right? You have a main table where we can show cool presentations. So the idea is maybe people come, they'll analyze things, they'll hang out. Okay. So we have, I mentioned here, a little Sky360. Maybe they meet over here and they're chatting around. Hey, what about the Sky360 systems? How do we do this? Okay. Maybe they like the NFTs. They have certain NFTs that are higher value. Okay. Up here. You can notice David also put in our first space balloon. So space balloon launch. I think it even has the Sky360. Yeah, you can see the patch here.
Yeah, true.
For your patch behind you. Yeah, so then we have the holders chat, okay? And you asked about Bored Ape Yacht Club, which we can talk through basically just real quickly in a second. But this is the NFT holder area where you have to be a member of you have to be an NFT holder, right? You have to be an investor, I guess, into the society, or you've helped. Right, we have a giveaway contest we're ramping up now to start for next week. So anyone on our Discord can actually share. You can get NFTs other ways. And then we have this D size zone. So back here, this is our levels. So levels 1 through 4. As you work more in the society, then you move into the DSci zone. And I see this is where we're doing like real research. So we have researchers come in, actually looking at videos, analyzing things. And then our launch station here is kind of exciting things. If we put out videos or we have meetings, then that would be the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is V1 of our Discord, our metaverse, and I see this just progressing into the future as we get better, technology. Now it can be VR, it can be AR. I could imagine that you're sitting in your room at home, and all of a sudden you can press a button and you zoom here, and you're literally in a 3D digital environment with other people talking about this Sky360 system.
So you were mentioning the word metaverse, and I think you mean it in the same way as Zuckerberg uses it with Facebook, the new metaverse, creating a 3D environment where people not only texting two-dimensionally, but can engage with others or find themselves in a 3D environment.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is for now, it's only a two-dimensional picture, but then it will be a 3D environment, right?
Yes. Well, I imagine right now the layout is Discord. So if you go to Discord, you click on different rooms, right?
Same layout, yeah.
And I see that progressing into just better technology, because right now we're looking at a two-dimensional screen, right? And we're going to analyze Avi Loab's response to the Kyiv. Mm-hmm. Well, we could be doing that here in 3D, right? It would be much cooler if we could be talking about it in 3D. And if you imagine like Minority Report, we're just like moving stuff around or analyzing things. So I think it's just the progression. Cool.
I think these 3D environments have a value when it gives you features like quick access to something that is around you. That's what we do when, for example, when you're in your kitchen, you design your kitchen that you have all your ingredients and dishes all next to you. That's why you are in a 3D environment. I think it's not only fancy. I think it's not only cool to be there, to feel yourself immersed in such an environment, but it also gives you benefits. It allows you to access things in a different way and to maybe represent. If I have to show you something here now on StreamYard, I have to put it on paper and show you like this. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe there are different forms of interaction and creation. That's what could be cool in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see it as the next generation of technology, and people are going to be able to work more efficiently, quicker, more efficient. I think it'll just be better. So whoever can, take these technologies and run with them first, it's going to have a huge advantage, so that's one thing. So excellent. Okay. Just because you were asking about that, and I thought it's very important to the UAP Society. So this is our initial MoonBase. And so now let's start investigating. Very interesting case. And we can show it. Let's see. This is basically your first. Sorry, let me share this. I had to change it. Sorry about that. Okay. So by far my most popular video was that UFOs over Ukraine, UFOs captured over Ukraine, 600,000 views in less than a week. It's just insane numbers for me. And I made that video because I was getting so many requests from different people. Basically, when my mom and my friends say, hey, and they send me this video on UFOs over Kyiv, I was like, okay, that's the time. I really need to make a video on this. So I made a video. I read through the actual report, and I thought it was quite interesting. It wasn't peer reviewed. There wasn't a lot of data. There was no dates in there. Only a few pictures. So not so much data. But I still thought it was very interesting, and really because it's exactly what you guys want to use, Sky360 or very similar systems, right?
Similar, right? Yeah, similar. True.
It was similar. So there was a different sensor. I believe the Sky360 sensor is more sensitive. It was larger.
And their sensors are, let's say, from sensitivity, they are the same. So they're 2.4 micrometer pixel size and the same sensitivity spectrum, because it's Sony IMX 178 sensor and the 294 sensor. So from sensor side, I would say we are from sensitivity the same. We will have more resolution because we will have more pixels. And they use a 6mm fisheye lenses for their purpose of meteor hunting, which is a good choice to do for meteor hunting. Yeah, exactly. That's our sensor, and the Mikey. We have a 3.5mm fisheye lens because we try to have more view on the hemisphere, but with 6mm, your hemisphere is a little bit, let's say, a little bit narrowed. So you don't have the 180 degrees, maybe you have 160 degrees, kind of. But still, for meteor hunting, it's a perfect setup that they used. So it's exactly the one that other meteor hunters use.
Okay, and their software as well. You knew their software, from what I remember.
Yeah. True.
And
Sharp
so they
is a software that runs on Windows, I think, only. And it gives you the tracking possibilities, but I'm not sure whether SharpCat can give you triangulation capabilities. So when you have 2 or more cameras, then I don't think SharpCat would help. So that's why I think they did the triangulation on paper. So really on calculating and doing the work on it. And that is my personal. So I'm only speaking personally for me now. Yeah. So the reaction of another astronomer making the work of other astronomers, putting it in such a ridiculous way so that they might misinterpret, let's say, bomb shells or rockets or whatever, as UAPs is a stretch for me. And especially if the one astronomer did not go into the details of their calculations. So he has because in the paper it does not say how they did the triangulations. My point of view is they are astronomers at an institute in Kyiv, Ukraine, and they hunt for meteors. And you can only do this if you do it right. Otherwise, you would never find any meteor. So you have to do your calculations, your triangulations right in order to do so. And I don't think they did it the first time. So when I read the paper, I get the feeling they do it for a long time. They do these meteor hunting for quite some time. So all these words that they use is common to them. So the way they present the results, their observation, and the data that is processed, the way they did it, for me, gives the idea this is not the first time they do such things for meteor hunting. So why shall these guys misinterpret bombshells during the war that is going on in Ukraine? For UAPs. It's fishy to me. I don't get this. So for me, it's a real paper with real data and real astronomers putting out something that someone can interpret as bombshells without going into detail on how they came up with the triangulation and the speeds and what happened to them on parameters. It sounds to me like a debunking thing. It's like someone says that is insects. Yeah, it's the same ridiculous thing.
Yeah, that was Mick West's argument, and I'll play it here in a second. Avi's argument and Mick West's argument. But I guess what is your just initial take on? You think artillery or insects is a ridiculous claim, or could it be possible that it's one of these things? Just on your initial, I know there's not much data in there.
Yeah, so I do not have the raw data. What I can only say is yet everything is possible. Yes, and it could be even fairies.
That was a piece of cake to.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
That's the video. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a video. This was Avi Loab. He was on the Event Horizon YouTube channel, and I can put a description and a link after. He basically goes through and explains everything here. We'll just play. It's 5 minutes long, but it explains everything you're talking about here. So we can just watch it and pause. I can pause it whenever you like.
Basically conclude that, and I submitted a paper within a couple of hours. That means that their size is a contradiction, but then assumption.
Okay, here we go.
On Earth, for every object, you will end up with a fireball that is more brilliant than all the lights put together on Earth, which sounds crazy because these people claimed, the astronomers who reported about these objects, they claimed that they are dark. They are darker than the sky. So these objects actually block light. They don't produce any light. And that sounded to me like a contradiction. But then...
Yeah, so his initial claim was that he goes after only the, it seems like to me, only the phantom objects. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't hear him once mention anything about these luminous objects, mm-hmm. you know, the Swifts and the Eagles. He mm-hmm. only talks about the phantom objects and mm-hmm. as being possible artillery shells. So let's go through.
And I realized my formula actually says that the amount of power released scales with distance to the 5th power. So that means that if you bring the distance down by a factor of 10, you will get a power that is completely reasonable, that you would not see in the daytime. And that means that instead of at 10 kilometers, these objects should be at 1 kilometer distance.
Yeah, I think that's his main argument, right? Is that the fact that they're going through the air, it would cause a massive fireball. So there's no way it could be far away because it's not causing a massive fireball.
If your preset is that the only things that enter Earth are asteroids, meteorites, that fly in our atmosphere, if that is your preset, then he's right. Yeah. Because everything that enters our atmosphere has to come through this layer of atmosphere with high speeds, and reacting in the atmosphere would create kind of luminous effects because the energy that is degrading there has to be degrading in another form of energy like temperature or in later on in light emitting photons. So yes, in this case, if this is his preset, then he is right. But are there other things entering our atmosphere besides asteroids and meteorites? We would say yes. So
what about the Tic Tac? My big argument is that's the whole point. You know, that's the whole point of the 5 observables. Is that
true?
Yeah, the Tic Tac, the whole reason it's very interesting, you know, or one of the reasons it's interesting to me is that the Tic Tac doesn't make any sonic booms, right? There's no shock waves.
Yeah.
And that's basically noted in most UAP events is there's no sound and there's no shock wave. So the fact that there's no sound and no shock wave, you know, that is at least evidence to me, or at least an indicator that what Avi is saying is not correct, that there are instances like the Tic Tac where you can see it, you know, David Fravor saw it, but then it was able just to accelerate away at an amazing speed that couldn't happen if it was pushing the molecules out of the way.
True. So, Chris, what we already learned in the last, let's say, year is that there are craft or objects that are multi-medium, transmedium objects. So they go from air into water without a splash, without speed reduction, without any sign of reaction with the medium. Otherwise, they couldn't go into the water like they go from air into water. You know what I mean? There has to be a change if they are in our 3D environment, like we are. So maybe, and this is the theory behind it, maybe there is a force field, whatever, that creates a sphere around the object that allows the object, maybe this is just a very thin laminate between our atmosphere and the interior of that sphere. You know what I mean? That the force field creates this barrier. Yeah, you see it in this anguilla.
Yeah, this is Aguadilla. I think probably one of the best UAP videos, if not the best. And you see here, this is where it goes through into the water.
Yeah, no splash.
With no splash, right? It's not affecting the environment.
True.
So my point to Avi Loab is, I mean, what about this? I mean, I get it. The argument he gave is great. I am glad he spoke up, and I hope he continues to do that. Right? We need science. I don't know of any other major scientists who are making papers on this, so I'm happy he did. But at the same point, his main argument is that it has to be closer because it's not possible for something to go through the air, or that we can see it go through the air, but it doesn't make a shockwave and it doesn't make a fireball, right? It's interacting. But then we'll never find anything new. This is like my problem with the academic world is, okay, if that's not possible, and your main take is, okay, it can't be possible because it's not possible, then we're never gonna find anything new.
And you only explain it with your mindset that you already have. So anything that is flying in our air can only be a meteorite or an asteroid, and they have to react with the atmosphere, and so have to create a sign of energy there, so light or temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
If he's not considering transmedium craft like this, then of course he's true if there are only asteroids and meteorites.
Yes.
But we know there's different things too. And if he's not considering these other things, then he's acting like a debunker. And this is actually no good.
Exactly. Let's hear.
And that means that their size, instead of being 10 meters, would be 1 meter. And that means that their speed, instead of being 10 kilometers per second or 15 kilometers per second, would be just 1 to 1.5 kilometers per second. Because they see them moving on the sky in angle. And translating that to a speed means that you need to know the distance. So if the distance is down by a factor of 10, the speed is down by a factor of 10. And then I realized both the speed and the size of the objects is exactly the same as artillery shells. So Ukraine is in military conflict. Artillery shells must be common. That's what they saw. That was a piece of cake to basically conclude that. And I submitted a paper within a couple of hours on this because I had the formula and I had everything written down.
That was like kind of the first giveaway for me. I already had it. I already had the idea. And I already had the equations ripped out. So in a few hours, I just wrote this paper saying what it is. Obviously, it's artillery. It's artillery shells, And I guess he goes on to, I don't know, hammer the astronomers there. Basically, and maybe they deserve it, for putting this stuff out. But it looks like he was already biased. Like he even says, I already had the idea that it was artillery, and I already had the idea that it's not possible, right? What they're claiming.
It's if you use Occam's razor in a harsh way, using Occam's razor on anything is not very scientific. I mean, most things can be explained very easily if you take things in a simple way. But let's say if you eliminate everything that's complicated and reduce a problem to the simplest part, then that is in most cases true for our reality. Yes, that's why Occam's razor. But if you use Occam's razor and do not, for example, the Aguadilla object, and do not know about this, and you do not take this into account in your thinking when you write this paper, and just use Occam's razor on old thinking, let's say, for me it feels like a debunking, and I think he does not do a good on the topic itself and on the astronomers by themselves. So it feels like one astronomer pecks on the other astronomer. That's the touch that I get.
Yeah, let's see. I'll remove that one. Yeah, let's see what he says here.
It was really interesting because to me, it was obvious that they made a mistake by at least a factor of 10. I mean, in principle, it could be more than a factor of 10 in distance. This could be, for example, just bullets shot from a machine gun that is 100 meters from the observatory.
And I mean, he's right. It could be. So that's a good argument, but it doesn't mean
How do you triangulate
that it is. Yeah, he
Try
does
to
highlight
I
here.
cannot tell, but definitely not farther than 1 kilometer, because then you would get these fireballs that would be impossible to avoid. So then I thought, okay, well, that's an obvious conclusion. Everyone would agree with me. But what do I see? People saying, oh, he didn't take into account the possibility. I mean, these are UAP advocates on Twitter saying he didn't consider the possibility that these objects could pass through air without interacting with it. Oh. And to that I say, well, how were these objects discovered? They were discovered by being dark. That means that they block light. What is light? Light is an electromagnetic entity, an electric field, magnetic field that interacts with objects. So if you block light, the object must have electromagnetic interactions. And therefore, it must interact with the molecules of air, because the molecules of air interact electromagnetically. So you cannot on the one hand claim that an object blocks light and doesn't block molecules of air, because molecules of air interact electromagnetically, and in fact they have a larger cross-section than light has for interacting with matter. So it's easier to interact with molecules of air than it is with the particles of light, photons. And so altogether what that means is, if you see a dark object that blocks light, as these observers claim, it's just a matter of logic to conclude that it must push the molecules of air when it moves through air, because it also blocks light. And as a result, it will create this fireball if it were a 10-kilometer distance. There is no way out of that. You cannot invent an object that will block light and not block molecules of air.
Are you sure, Avi? I guess.
So his argument is physically, from our physical standpoint, our standpoint of physics that we have today, he's right. If something is not reacting with our atmosphere, we would not be able to see it. So why see a black object that blocks out other things? True. But he does not. In this case, if he is true, then the Aguadilla case would never have happened.
Yes.
How can you see an object that is transmedium? You shouldn't be able to see it if it's transmedium, because if it is not reacting with the medium that's surrounding, it is not reacting with the photons that is surrounding it. Exactly. The reflections. But if it's self-emitting, then of course you would see that.
That's a great point. I guess, and that's what's breaking everyone's mind on the Tic Tac is, how can you see something, but then it doesn't make any sound? Like, how does it not make any shockwave? How does something sit in no wind? That's kind of just as weird for me as when these things are stationary in high winds.
But if, for example, if you take a real dark color, this Vanta black color, for example, and you paint something with this black color, it is not reflecting any light, because it is so nanoparticle, so small that every light that hits it is consumed. It's not reflecting anything back. And when you take this, let's say you have a figure and you paint it Vanta black, and you put it in front of you, you cannot see through. Huh. Although it is absorbing everything and not reflecting, So that's why I think black objects can still be seen as only, let's say, shading the thing, the light that is behind it.
This would be the albedo-less. It's like a black hole of light. So it's what I think Avi is saying is everything reflects light, right? So he's saying everything reflects light, except there are things that don't reflect light that we can see, which is a black hole, right? We can see a black hole. It doesn't reflect light. So that would be your albedo-less. But his argument is, if we can't see the sky behind these objects, then they must be reflecting the light back to us. Interesting.
I don't see it reflecting here.
Yeah, this
would
would
be consuming, absorbing
blocking
the light.
it.
Yeah, blocking it.
Well, his main argument is that how can it reflect photons? How can it reflect light or interact with light, but not interact with the environment? And a simple argument, I would say, the counter would be, look at Aguadilla. How can this happen?
How can this happen? How
or
can
look
we still
at
see it, although it is transmedium?
Exactly, transmedium, same thing.
No way. So
now he gets into Mick West. This is interesting too, because I'm glad Avi's here. I don't want to just hammer him, but his viewpoints does seem like he doesn't think UAPs are a possibility. He doesn't think actual, the Tic Tac or Aguadilla is a possibility, like you mentioned, or he would have, said something about it. I believe so. He talks about Mick West here. It's pretty funny.
Then I hear from a reporter from Vice, Matthew Gold, and he sends me an email from the observers, from the astronomers, the lead astronomer of the team, Boris Zilayev, says, Avi Loab is a theorist. We are experimentalists. We just report what we see. To which I say, well, both experimentalists and theorists are obligated to use logic. You can't avoid thinking. You cannot just say, I'm an observer, I don't want to think about what I see. Because if you claim something, if you claim a certain distance, you need to check whether your method of inferring the distance might be wrong. And if the implications of having that distance are incompatible with what you see, then you made a mistake. And the method they use to infer the distance is really very faulty. It's not as if they had a lot of sites where they triangulated and found these dark objects from multiple directions so they could pinpoint the distance very accurately. They didn't have that data. So
that was a good point he brought up. He does bring up triangulation, having multiple sites, because they triangulated. But you said, Richard, that we need to have our Sky360 systems within 30 kilometers at the maximum. And these things were 120 kilometers apart. So they wouldn't be able to, they weren't close enough to triangulate any of these objects. They could only triangulate the one that was up at 1,170 kilometers, which is probably a satellite, right? It had a variable. It had a variation in color, 1/100th of a second. So maybe it was spinning. But he does mention here about having multiple sites, right? And so that's why we want to put our Sky360 systems closer together, maybe 10, 20 kilometers.
So basically, if you have two stations, you can start triangulating. If you have three stations, your triangulation becomes more accurate.
Excellent.
If you have four, even more, blah, blah, blah. Like GPS. The more satellites, the more accuracy you get. But you can start with two. Two already give you a triangulation. And let's say, in this case, for this observation institute in Kyiv, they use this setup for meteor hunting. Because it's two fisheye cameras, that's not the normal equipment that astronomers use, because they most look through their scopes. They use a terrestrial setup for terrestrial purposes, which is meteor hunting. Anything that enters our atmosphere shall be recognized. And not only this, they had two with 120 kilometers distance. Why this distance? Maybe because they have an institute there, and an institute in Kyiv, an institute there. So I don't think that is a setup that they have chosen to go with the 120 kilometers. It's just, I think it's just two institutes on that distance. But when you consider this, the Earth has a curvature, and the Kym, so the horizon, is at a certain distance when you mount your, let's say when you stand on the ground. When you stand with 1.5, 1 or 2 meters eye level, and you look to the horizon is roughly about between 30 and 40 kilometers distance. And that's why we choose to go for the 30 kilometers, because that's the distance to the Kyiv.
I see. So it's based on the curvature of the Earth.
True.
Okay.
That's one hint. Yeah. There are several others because we have several sensors built in, and all these sensors have different range capabilities. So to make a sweet spot in between, we said we go for the 30-kilometer triangulation because then we have more sensors that can act on that distance. For example, radio frequency can go 1,000 kilometer up vertical. Optical, we only go for, let's say, our benchmark 422. So that's an explanation for why we choose the 30 kilometers. There's no other reason. For the Ukrainian guys, my personal point of view is they had their setup already in place. They did it since years. Okay, they did meteor hunting since years, so they are familiar with triangulation there on that distance with 120 kilometers. My point of view is this is not their first paper about meteors, so they know how to triangulate. And a bullet on 120 kilometers with a fisheye camera has no resolution at all. With the fisheye cameras that we use, and they are very similar to the ones that they use, we resolve, let's say, a 747, which is a big bird, on 40,000 feet with about 10 to 15 pixels. Okay? When you take a shell,
like this thing, well, bigger than this, I guess.
Pardon me?
Yeah, like this is your material, right? Or this is older. This is SkyHub stuff.
Yeah, that's an older version. That's a 2-year-old version. But
yeah, this is
basically
UAP,
it's
right?
you can compare this with their setup. True. So if it would be a shell, a bomb shell, he says 10 centimeter size, and even if it's a meter size, a huge bomb, you would not see it
because the sensor is way too small, right? You just can't.
The sensor is way too small, and if you have two sensors on 120 kilometers distance, there's no triangulation capability. It's impossible. It's go to the extreme and think about insects like Mick West did.
Yeah.
You cannot see an insect from two fish eyes 120 kilometers distance. That's just ridiculous. And you cannot see a shell on 10 centimeters. And I guess you could never see a car on that size, on that distance with fisheye cameras. The fisheye cameras that are used here.
Yeah, and that's why that's why we need the point to zoom, right? I mean, that's the main argument for
True.
And that would be.
But it's also an argument for the Ukrainian scientists to say what we are going for with our setup is meteors. And they have to be on a certain size, otherwise, or light emission, because the size can be small, but if there's much energy in play, that could look big because light glows and reacts on the sensors, although the object is small. But the dark ones would never be visible if it's a shell. Never, ever. And what confuses me so much is that someone like Avi Loab makes this mistake. And for me, this is a bad mistake.
So you think it's not possible, even with the settings that they put in, right? They said they put it at greater than 50 hertz. They had to make the color stops between 14 and 16 to get that excessive color. You believe that you couldn't capture even artillery shells or bullets?
True.
Oh,
because
cool.
they're too small. I mean, you can get it's always about angular resolution. It's just how big it is, how big. Because a small object on close distance is the same as a big object on big distance. So it's only about the angular size.
Okay.
This one.
That's an interesting point. Let's look at that then. This is Mick West. So Avi does talk about Mick, right? So Mick basically came on and said that he's wrong. And so Avi, and he does say in that interview that he's attacked from many sides, right, for using logic, right? I think his logic that we can understand is it's based on currently known physics. I would say that he's not entertaining the idea of the 5 observables or the fact Aguadilla, Tic Tac, etc. So based on logic, he says that it's artillery shells, right? So Mick West basically writes him an email, and Avi's funny when he talks about it, but Mick West says that basically the artillery shells theory of Ukrainian UAP, for it to be correct, the object would have to be moving toward the camera. So it would be about 30% bigger in the third frame, top left. It's slightly smaller, so he's wrong. Okay. You can look here. And I've learned better that Mick West, if he throws something out here, it's probably worth looking into it, and I think Avi, I think he's discounting it, which I think is a mistake.
Yeah.
So this is what Mick West says here, is that you have your three images, right, from that composite image. They're 0.02 seconds apart because that's what it's set at, right? I think 50 hertz. And so you have it tracking, right? And the problem was they're not the same. They're all the same size. Okay, so if we look here, this is basically the same size in the image, right? But it should be like this, 30% bigger if it's moving towards us. You can look, maybe you'd see it here better on this image. Yep. So this is the actual composite image. So what you see is the object moved faster between here and here than it did between here and here, right? Avi Loab describes this. He says this very pedantic, and we should probably just listen to it because it's just funny. Let me see if he can play it here.
My point is, you have to use your head. You have to think about it and realize that you can't have a distance of 10 kilometers with those velocities because you would see a fireball. And therefore, the distance needs to be smaller. And then I get an email from Mick West,
yes,
who is the official UAP debunker. Okay, so he made a name for himself. He's not a scientist, but made a name for himself for debunking unidentified aerial phenomena over the years. And he also has a problem with my interpretation. So I'm getting attacked from all directions. When you see people shooting at you from opposite directions, you think to yourself, maybe I should duck down, and then the bullets would reach the other side. In my case, I had a bulletproof shield of science. So I don't care if they shoot at me because I have science to protect me. So Mick West, what is his problem? His problem is, if you look at one of the figures, the images that were released by the Ukrainian astronomers, they had several snapshots of a single object separated by 0.02 seconds. So you have 3 images of the dark object separated by the same amount of time. But what you find is that the distance projected on the sky between the third snapshot and the second snapshot is bigger than the distance projected on the sky between the second snapshot and the other one under it. So the claim is, by Mick West, the object must be accelerating because it moves at a different speed at different times, and only an insect can do that. An artillery shell will not do that because it moves at a constant speed while you're taking these frames. So you would see always the same length across the sky traveled by this object. And so I said to Mick, have you never seen a train in your life? When the train is far away, it moves very little across your field of view. But when it comes close to you, it just zooms by you. How is that possible if the train is moving at a constant speed? How is it possible that projected on your field of view, it moves very slowly far away and it moves very fast close to you? Did you ever think about it?
So, I mean, there's reasons he does get, attacked. I mean, I have found, like, whatever I put out onto the internet, I do get back. So if you put out a bunch of, claims or funny statements like that, you're gonna get stuff back.
Chris, what I think both of them, Avi and Mick, are not taking into account is that the material that is recorded is from a fisheye camera, a fisheye lens, which gives you a curvature. Okay, so anything that flies straight always looks as if it flies on a curve. Okay, if I take a normal camera, let's say a smartphone, and I take a video of a plane, in that video it would look like if it's flying straight, or a slight curve maybe.
Yeah.
If you take the fisheye and the same flight path of the plane, it's always a curve. And because the fisheye is the atmosphere is tricky. The atmosphere is so thick that horizontally looking gives you another refraction as if you look vertically. Okay? So objects that come horizontally look totally different if they come vertically, if they fly vertically. You have a lensing effect in the atmosphere, so that distorts objects and their flight paths. So, for example, if something flies straight, and you'll see it on a fisheye, it would look like, I tried to paint it with my finger. It makes a bow, comes over, and makes a bow again. So it's cool. Like a double S, although it flies straight.
Okay,
that's intrinsic in a fisheye optic. But for astronomers, not to be able to cope with that, it's ridiculous, because that's the basic element of astronomers, what they learn in school. What is optics, how to calculate the intrinsics, because if you do not do this, you would never be able to triangulate anything. And they did it, and they did it since a long time. So they have two stations, 120 kilometers apart, two fisheyes. And if they do triangulation with meteorites, asteroids, what have you, they would certainly have their tool set in play to do it right. Otherwise, they would never have a chance to find a meteorite or something else. And keep in mind, that's a distance of 120 kilometers. It's not next to each other. So all this bullet and insect thing is so ridiculous. Sorry, it's a shame for me. It's a shame to see those people that I consider of high intelligence. Even Mick West is for me a high intelligent person, although his setup, his preset is not mine. But he's a very intelligent person. But to see those being that far away from reality is for me it's ridiculous. It's a shame.
Well, I guess my own impression was that the insect is a possibility. You know, that would be, based on at least Mick's argument, that would be more of a possibility than the artillery shells, you know? But you're saying that insects is even off the table. You don't think insect is even an option based on the... So
when you read the paper, then you find out that they only took those objects into account that were seen by both stations, so that they could triangulate them. If they could not triangulate them, with one station, you cannot triangulate. You cannot say speed, size, what have you. They were talking about speed and size and so forth.
Yeah, so but they didn't use triangulation, though. I think that was the problem, is they were using this Rayleigh scattering estimate.
Yeah, but you do it on both sides. So you can go with angular directions. You can also go with estimates from one sensor and compare it with the estimates of another sensor and do your triangulation that way. So I think it's always a combination of doing more calculations in order to, because they only have two stations in play. So I think they would do much more. And what you also see, they go very deep into color and light calculations, just because they only have two stations. So they have to get more aligned data on it to make that triangulation correct. So they make an estimate of, let's say, the 100 what was the kilometer speed?
It was very fast, 15 kilometers per second.
15 kilometers per second, yeah. To come up with that, to base your estimate on more data, then you would go for this, bringing into calculation of what the color shift is, maybe even doing Doppler shift estimations.
Oh, I see here. I think the only one I know about where they confirmed that it triangulates was this one, this 1170 kilometers. Although maybe they had other confirmation. Not sure. The final point, why don't we just cover before this goes too long, is it basically the observatory, after Avi makes his claim, he writes emails back to them. They basically come back and say that he is correct. The main observatory comes in and stomps on their guy, this guy Boris Zilyaev, and says he's totally out to lunch. Let's listen to that. Now we should be done here.
The answer is that the angle across which it moves over a fixed period of is ricochets or observatory, which is handled by the National Academy of Science of Ukraine. And they say, we believe that the distance measurements are not reliable. That in fact, what was reported in this paper is not to be trusted in terms of distance. So they basically sided with me. And they say we have no responsibility for what these authors, these astronomers wrote. So what's the bottom line? What's the lesson from this? First of all, it was a revelation to me, because here is a situation where I just follow, simple rational thinking, and I'm being attacked from all directions. Now, should I really pay attention to what these people are saying? If some people want to believe, they don't want to think. Other people just say, we just observe these things. We don't know what they mean. These are scientists, the astronomers that reported about it. And other people just don't understand what's going on. And you get caught in the middle of that, where my interpretation is so simple and makes so much sense, in a war zone, to either have bullets from a machine gun or artillery shells flying around, and that's what these dark objects are, rather than talking about an object the size of an airplane moving at escape speed from the Earth at a distance of 10 kilometers that would unavoidably produce a fireball. So, that was interesting. It's a teaching moment for me to basically, sort of like a litmus test, to see who is reasonable.
Interesting.
But Chris, isn't this a representation of our current state on this planet?
Yes.
Even scientists cannot sit on the table and talk with each other. So they have to always fight with their hypothesis against the other ones with their hypothesis, and discriminating one institute over the other because one is Harvard and the other one is just Kyiv. You know what I mean? Why is it that way? Why is it that scientists cannot only that they have to defend their hypothesis? You know what I mean? It's my hypothesis that I have to defend it with all my strength, with all my name and, rank.
I think it's just the human, our humanism. We compete, we're from this earth and we compete for survival.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. And I respect Avi, if he's inspired me. I had him on the show. He has said that he wouldn't support or he couldn't fund or help fundraise for UAP Society, because we have our goals are the same. So we can't work together.
Because the goals are the same, that's why we can't work together?
Yes.
Oh, that's a new one. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He said he couldn't help fundraise. I said, would you accept an NFT, an ambassador token? Like you have, right? We gave you an NFT, an ambassador token of 42. And he said, initially, yeah, that'd be great. And I was like, awesome. And I put his name up on the thumbnail and I was like, Avi Loab, he's joining the team. I was just excited. And I guess he got some email from one of his funders. And, they were basically like, are you working with UAP Society, et cetera? And so he said, no, I'm not, I'm not working with them. And his answer, his reply to me was that our goals are the same. He's leading a organization with the same goals as UAP Society. So it would be a clear conflict of interest if he were to work with UAP Society.
In the same way, he could say one institute like Harvard Astronomy Institute does the same as, let's say, Kyiv, and that's why we cannot work together. This is ridiculous, and this is actually against scientific thinking, isn't it?
I think initially he wanted to, but then it comes like Lowlands Pete says, man, money comes with restrictions, right? They're always talking about funding the academic world. I think they have to. He has to defend all of his hypotheses because it ultimately comes down to his credibility, right? And if his credibility in the academic world is not there, then he won't get funding.
Yeah, true.
People will not fund him. So he has to be very careful about where he puts his credibility out.
Yeah.
Which I think is totally different. And I was in kind of a heated discussion over the weekend on some social groups where I think the academic world doesn't understand the YouTube world, because I made that video because I thought it was interesting because people wanted to hear it and because I wanted to investigate it, right? So I can spend time investigating. It takes many hours to make a video, actually, like 3 or 4 days just to make one solid video. So I try and direct my videos towards learning something and investigating, right? So I make that video, and now immediately we're getting back amazing data, right? We're understanding, okay, could it be insects? Possibly not. Here's the arguments for insects. Could it be artillery shells? Okay, maybe not, possibly not. Here's the argument for artillery shells. We're using the whole YouTube, we're using the internet, the world, basically, to help us find out what this is, to investigate. Whereas the academic world is more like, no, I'm the smartest person, right? I put all this knowledge into my brain, and now I'm going to use it on this problem, right? Well, I think it's just the old way of doing so. It's like Web 2.0, it's like science 2.0. So now I think it's faster. Let's put it out there, open source. Everybody look at it. Let's use everybody's knowledge.
But I think you're right. It's the Avi's preset. Because he wrote this book and paper about Oumuamua. Yep. So, and he now has investors, and his task is to prove his hypothesis about techno science of other civilizations that pass our solar system. So he leaned out the window, and he has to prove it, and he has money involved. So there's people who gave him money for, and he has to somehow stay on that platform and keep it and not let it be UAPs being here. It's, for me, it feels like the SETI situation. SETI set their own goal as we have to find signatures from other civilizations that are far away. We do not look closely. We do not look in our own
it's not possible
system, because if they would be here, we would have already seen them. Argument
logically, if we use logic.
Yeah, it's the chimpanzee logic. But if you stand at that point, if this is your point of view, that aliens, just call it aliens, can only be far away, and they could never travel here because the distance is so big. They can only send us, I don't know, probes, robotic probes, because they can last hundreds, thousands of years maybe. Or they can send us signals, because signals can walk very far and long. And so maybe even 100 light years away civilizations can communicate with us, kind of. It's their set, and they don't step aside from this. That's what I do not understand. SETI does this since 40 years now.
Yeah.
And they make other efforts towards finding signatures closer. They turn it into ridiculousness. Now they changed a little bit in the last year or two.
Yeah.
But before that, 40 years of, that was a hammer. It was a wall built around SETI. We have one goal and one task, and that's it. And everything else is debunkable because it's nonsense.
Well, we would see them, just like you said. If they were here, we would have met them.
Yes, absolutely. They would
That's
ring
interesting.
the
video
bell on my
tonight,
door.
though.
Absolutely.
Did you read Hal Puthoff's paper, Ultra-Terrestrial Models?
Oh man, I read so much about from Hal Puthoff. Can you give me?
It's my video tonight, so I basically go through the whole paper. He goes through and explains basically ultra-terrestrial is a different model. He argues we're not considering all the options, and ultra-terrestrials is there's some entity, whatever it is, here, right? It could be Atlantis, it could be what else? A stranded ET or god, or colonizing gods, etc. Or aliens / gods. But the point is, ultra-terrestrials, if they're here with us, then they actively want us to not know about them, right? They would actively keep us in the dark. So that's where they could be here, but we may not see them. It's just one answer rather than stopping. What I see is Avi, he's just stopping, which is great. I'm happy. I'm really happy he spoke up. I hope he takes our spears with in good jest. I'm glad he's talking about it, but it's like he just stops, right? Because it's not possible. It's not possible that it could be going through the air that fast and not making a fireball. It's not possible it could go through the air and not make shockwaves. So we're just going to end the investigation. We're going to end the investigation, and I think that's the wrong option. Same with SETI. It's not possible that they would be here.
True.
Otherwise, we would run into them. So we're just not going to look. So
that's my main. Chris, it feels like if it's only for their own purpose. So SETI is not publicly funded, but privately funded. So they need their the money givers. And if they start derailing from their purpose, maybe they are frightened of losing these funds. So if SETI opens up and says, oh, maybe aliens are already living here with us, maybe their funding people would then say, oh no, now you are on the woo path, and now I put my money somewhere else.
Yeah, you've lost your path. I get that a lot. Anytime I go too woo, or bring up arguments, that's what I get. You've gone into pseudoscience. You're going all this directions, but how the hell do we learn anything new? How did anyone discover radio waves, or how did you discover the Earth was round? It was thinking outside of our mainstream society, outside of the mainstream science. I'm not saying that's what you end on, but we should at least cater to those, not to waste our time. I think academia is, they don't want to spend their time looking so hard into these things. And I would agree that's probably true, but that's why I don't say exactly what it is, because I don't know. I don't know that it's artillery shells 100%. I don't know that it's insects. I don't know it's UAPs, but I know that we should be putting out more systems like this, which we are, to get more data. So that's what we're going to focus on.
From my point of view, I can say this is my point of view personally. I'm blocking Sky360 as an organization here. It's my personal point of view. You wouldn't resolve artillery shells on a fisheye camera, so artillery shells is for me a no. You would never resolve insects. I mean, you would only resolve them if they are close, and you would never resolve them on both stations. 120 kilometers distance. That's what I say. Okay. 2 stations, 100 kilometer distance. You would never see a bombshell on both fish eyes, and never an insect. You would never see a car on both fish eyes because they could not resolve it.
Okay.
So this is for me a no-go. It has to be something far away and therefore bigger. So no bombshells and no insects.
But I don't think they triangulated those. I think that was the main problem that he's arguing with. But we have to ask. I need to get a hold. So that'll be the main question: is did you triangulate these? According to the main astronomical observatory statement, they didn't do it properly. So I mean, based on what we have, that's all we know. But for us, so we do have Sky360. We have many people that want to put in systems. They're ready as soon as you guys feel comfortable.
So if you want, I'll give you a quick update on our situation.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 months ago, in August, we decided to go with ROS 2. So this was a big decision, and we had huge discussions, lengthy discussions about it. What is ROS2?
What did you say, ROS2? I'm sorry.
ROS2. I tell you what ROS2 is. ROS2 is, let's say, a method, a software method and software environment where messages are sent between entities on a fire forget basis. Okay, so when one entity, software entity, throws out a message to another one in let's say in classic programming style, you use TCP. So one is sending a package and the other one is accepting that package and sending an acknowledge back. So all this back and forth communication takes time. ROS2 is a robotic, let's call it a robotic operating system. It's now in version 2 since 10 years or more. And it allows for high-speed communication without acknowledgement. It's only firing. That makes a system of multiple sensors and multiple entities, turns it into a real-time environmental, real-time system per se. Because
that's the big difference, right? Between current meteor tracking is it's post-processing, from what I understand.
Yes, true.
So this is the big kind of jump that Sky360 is making, is that real-time processing to add it to that fisheye, so that we can point to zoom, right, and get that zoom in image.
Yeah, that's crucial per se, to have high speeds and so that the guiding and vectoring is precise, let's say. But from our point of view, and this is Ido is one of our head of developments. We have two, is bringing in this idea to turn the station into a robotic system, meaning we have sensors and we have actors and we have decision makers and blah, 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 and representers and transformers, and all these entities and methods shall communicate in real time, allowing for real-time representation and analysis. If we do not do this, we always run, let's say, behind. It's especially when you go into triangulation and you have two stations that have to have the same view. Yes, of course, we are on the same time routine, so we have all the synchronized.
Yeah.
But if you're not real time, you're always lagging behind. And you will always have a lag. And the more components you have inside, the more the lag increases. So if just two components, there's a small lag between them and you can work with it. But if you add a cascade, a pipeline off, then this could fill up.
I see.
And to turn the station into a real-time station and sensory equipment was, I think, a huge improvement on our system. And our discussions, and they were lengthy and went on for a couple of weeks, back and forth, and that we decided yes to go there. It also meant that we have to pin a lot of what was already developed. So things have to be taken and now wrapped into to make them a kind of a ROS node, let's say a sensory node that acts like I can send real-time messages, but I can also receive and process real-time messages. And now we are making all parts, turning them into ROS2 nodes, so that we have this real-time communication between all parts. Because, it's like a chain. The chain is as strong as the weakest element. So we have to turn everything into real-time in order to have a complete station into real-time.
I see.
We cannot lose.
The big breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's something that kicked us back, let's say, 2 months easily.
Yeah. So I guess what is the timeline then now? How is it doing?
Yeah. So first of all, we tried to give out, to create the alpha version by end of September.
Yes.
We don't have an alpha version now, and it's already October, mid of October.
Yeah.
But we had discussions with our stationers, with our community. And at the end, everyone said we should go for a better system, a future system, and not how to say this in English?
Hamstring ourselves.
Kill it because because time is more crucial.
Yes.
No, time is not that crucial. The quality of the system is more crucial.
Yes.
So that was more or less the outcome of all these discussions. So spend this extra time that is needed to turn it into a real-time system is much more valuable to the outcome at the end than sparing 2-3 months development time on that.
Excellent.
Instead of not doing this, know what I mean? Okay, so this is one major interruption we had.
But as far as prototyping, so our plan is basically to move forward and put out some prototypes at least to try and help. I mean, I know we're obviously trying to push the development, but like you said, it's more important that we get a solid product. Because if we're going to make 150,000 of these things, we
absolutely.
want it to be correct. 100%.
That's also on the hardware. It's not only software that we develop; we also make the hardware for it if it's not available from shelf. But we have to aggregate everything into it, and we have to test it, and it all has to work smoothly with each other's. So, for example, the enclosure, the box itself is a piece of hardware that is going into iterations. We already have our first boxes out, and yes, we found some flaws or things we can make better, and now we are producing the next batch round, and that will be an improvement too. So everything is improving, even the camera. Now we have, we're going with the QHY183. You showed it before.
Yeah.
We consider this as our camera of choice because it's a compromise between two very different light situations. The daylight, where you actually need very small pixel size, let's say below the 1 micrometer. And if you go into night, then you have to collect a lot of light and you want to go for, let's say, 10 micrometers per pixel. And this camera is a good compromise. It goes with 2 micrometer pixel size. Yeah, that's it.
But this hasn't changed, right? So are you going to see massive hardware changes underlying? Like, does the Jetson still work?
So now this is one of the discussions that are still going on about the hardware platform. So we started with the Jetsons because of the Jetson family, because these were the only ones that had CUDA cores on the boards. There's no other. There's only CUDA cores on graphic cards. If you use, exactly. And meanwhile, some are available again. So we have to look at the price.
That's way higher than it used to be. I mean,
that's three times the value now. But it's only because they are not available.
Yeah.
So they raise the prices. I mean, this is the market. It's ridiculous. So we're discussing now different platforms where we have the same capabilities of using CUDA cores. For example, going with mini ITX boards and using graphic cards. That's an option.
Yes.
If
you're looking at those prices.
There's options. Yeah, there are options. Not going with CUDA cores, but doing it on the FPGA or RISC chips, anything else. So that is still not decided because we are very depending on the market, what is available. For now, we still focus on the Jetsons and the CUDA cores on the Jetson boards because we heard from NVIDIA that they were not satisfied by themselves with the Chinese situation, and basically the electronics market is very down in the Western
It seems like
hemisphere.
I mean, I've been dealing with that for over a year now. I know you guys, that was been your most time sink, right? Is finding these hardware components.
Yeah. So what we heard from NVIDIA is that they try to overcome the Chinese situation by, let's say, producing in the US or producing in Europe or producing anywhere else, not in China. And this is something that NVIDIA was talking about a half year ago already. But I think it takes time to to transfer production from China to wherever. It takes time. And we're not the only ones demanding these boards. So there's a huge demand everywhere. All these producers that integrated these boards in their products and now have problems procuring them. So there's huge industry running after NVIDIA and crying for those boards. So NVIDIA is under pressure in solving that situation. And I hope that it solves by next year somehow. There has to be a change. I mean, there's not only us.
Someone has to make it. I mean,
someone has to make it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is the technology should be just improving to make it easier to miniaturize, to make it should go cheaper, right? It shouldn't triple in cost. That just seems
the triple in cost is just because China's the big producer and they ship outwards, and then you have importers and they have their storages and they buy 10,000 pieces and so forth, and then they resell in the locally. And if their figures go down, their storage figures go down, so they go from 10,000 to 100. They say, because they make money, we cannot sell many more because we only have 100 left. So let's say if we sell normally 1,000 per month and we are only on 100, so we have to raise the price to get the same income per month. So the product has to go 10 times the price to compensate for the less availability in their storage. It's simple, stupid, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all your time, Richard. And so it sounds like you guys you're making upgrades, making iterations. We'll keep making videos and keep pushing out. And whenever we can,
if you want to follow us,
make a prototype, we'll.
Definitely. We're working hard on, I mean, we're now, I think 28 people now we have 8 teams even.
Excellent.
And so many people working on different workplaces. Some things are already ready, let's say, ready to use. And still we reshape them yet because others are not ready yet. So the alpha is when all parts that comprise the alpha are ready. So some are already ready, some are not, but gives room for improvement until all the others come to the same point. To make the long story short, we are behind our time, I know, but we decided to invest this time for a better product because real time is a real crucial system, and IDO could persuade us about this. And we also see it that other organizations like Boston Dynamics is only doing using ROS2 for their robots. So this is a system that is very much in use with high-tech companies, and let's say that's why we said it's a good choice to go there. It takes more time, but I think by, let's say, in 1 or 2 months, we will finally have our first alpha that I guess can roll out.
And as far as other prototypes, could we put out a system or, let's say 2 systems right next to each other or close by, and just replicate what the main astronomical observatory in Kyiv did, and just see if it's possible, retroactively, not through you guys, but let's say we buy all the components, put it out. We can use that meteor tracking software. We can do the same thing that the astronomers in Kyiv did, but now use triangulation, right? And see if we can replicate this.
Absolutely. You can even,
I mean, what you're talking about is the final. So I know you're developing the system to sell 150,000, right, to place around the world. But I guess just interested people or UAP Society or us could go and just try and replicate it with current systems that we have, right? I mean, there's no need to wait fully until the full Sky360 system is done to do anything. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, true. What you already can do is you can purchase an enclosure, you can purchase the camera, you can purchase a Raspberry Pi, for example, and get a camera feed out of it. And if you have 2 stations and 2 camera feeds, then you get 2 videos, and then you can apply your triangulations. That can already be done. Yeah, you can already test several triangulation methods and algorithms, for example. That's something that can be done by other people because it's just mathematics. It's just,
and that's the thing, you know, I think everyone else is going through the same issues, right? Galileo project, you know, I haven't seen any videos come out of Galileo project or any captures of anything in the news, you know. So I think Sky360 is an open source grassroots, you know, volunteer project, UAP Society, open source. Like we're showing people what's going on, you know. So, but behind the scenes, why is Galileo project? Why haven't they delivered anything? Probably these same reasons. You know, they're probably going through the same, or could be going through the same development program. They just don't want to tell us, right? Because then they would give us some advantage, and we would get closer to the same goal, right? To get there first. That's why. So awesome.
I'm still having no idea. I know that the setup, because it's published from Avi, but software-wise, not much. I have no idea. So they all talk about AI, of course, and neural networks they want to use. But yes, where use it, how to use it, on what material you use it, what is the outcome of that? Everyone is throwing in machine learning and AI on any topic. Yeah? I'm going on the toilet with AI.
Yes.
But what do you do there? So there's
the real world implementation, I think, is a lot more difficult than people are considering.
There's so many things you can do with it. The question is on what material. So, for example, we had a discussion on Sunday using the a neural network for just feed in a video to a neural network and let decide everything. So not only what it is and where it is and how it moves and the size of it and even the colors, everything can be analyzed. Yes, true. But what would that mean is you have a huge set of properties that you have to feed in. So with every property, you have to give all variations of that property into it. So that scales this neural network up to X dimensions. You know what I mean? If you take if you have a simple question, yes or no, it's a binary decision. That is a very simple neural network to find those two, either yes or no. But if you increase your parameters, exponentially, because with every additional parameter it explodes. So
you have a whole nother tree.
True, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. I
think the only one. Maybe we talked to Tesla. You know, they seem like the only ones that have. They're the furthest along in real world AI. You know, maybe we can ask them.
They do a combination. They do a combination of, let's say, old school triangulation, for example, or old school analysis, or deriving parameters, the intrinsic parameters to get the real position, for example, but also implying add-ons like a neural network to analyze that what was calculated. Yes, some say these calculations are already the base of part of the neural network, saying every calculation can also be a parameter in it. And let's say if you have a calculation with 10 parameters, then those 10 parameters are in a relation to each other via this formula. And that's why
many options.
A neural network can do this. But yes, it exponentially blows it up, the neural network, and makes it more consuming on the platform. So all these fancy ideas of putting everything into a neural network and decided everything it's a nice fancy idea, but you have to have the hardware that is capable of doing so. Because the more computer power you need, the bigger investment you have to take into. And That's not the thing we want to go for, because we want to make it as cheap as possible and efficient as possible. So we have to find the sweet spot in efficiency. And that's why I try to be conservative here and say, yes, we use neural networks. We have 3 now that are on specific parts, but we also have old school motion detection, for example, or background subtraction, or edge detection. We do not need a neural network to do that.
So you're building a real world observation robot.
Yes, that's a good word for that. Yeah.
And you have to, and having to apply AI machine learning over that is very easy to say, but then the actual real world implementation has way more implications, is what I'm hearing. One question here is, I didn't understand, is the UDP protocol solution to solve the timing issue? Okay.
That's the base of ROS2, UDP. True.
Okay, cool. To solve the timing. Yeah, to make it so fast, right? Like you just mentioned, to try and minimize it, to get the hardware and the software to match, because you bring up a great point. And that was your big point, Richard, I think, different from SkyHub, is that you thought SkyHub just focused on only the software.
Yeah.
And they didn't have enough hardware integration.
Yeah.
So that they could find a final fit. And so what you're saying, and what I hear, or what I understand, is that matching those is very important. And you can say we're going to use machine learning AI, but as soon as you try and just take that and just post it onto the current hardware, you're going to have serious issues based on just the nature of it, how fast it is, the timing of it, all those issues. So this is where, again, you're trying to match those together. So
yeah,
I think that's your forte, right? Is matching the hardware to the correct software to make it just as efficient as possible and cheap.
Yes, true. This was one of the mistakes, let's say, at the very beginning of SkyHub, where only software developers were on the table. Me, I was the only hardware guy there. So I had a bad time telling them software isn't everything. We need the hardware that the software runs on, and it has to be adjusted to it.
Yeah.
So you go always with the right hardware for the right purpose. You don't go with a little Cinquecento and go on a Formula race. You would never win that race. Okay.
Yeah. Or put your grandma on a race car. Maybe she's an amazing race car driver. I don't know, but it needs to match up, like you mentioned. Yeah, quite interesting. All right, Richard, we'll call it here, man. An hour and a half. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for everybody showing up as well. We'll hope to do these in the future. I learned a ton from talking with you as well, Richard. Sorry to hear about the slight delays, but I'll keep making videos to put pressure on you guys. So
yeah, no problem. Put pressure on us.
Thanks for the work,
man. Put pressure on all developers. So
yeah, thanks to all those guys that are in there. I'm sure we have some people here, some developers. If anyone wants to get involved in software or hardware development, Richard mentioned 8 different teams. It's all different types: cooling, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. I mean,
it's a full spectrum engineering effort here.
And sounds like we need some robotics experts. So if you have robotics talent, it sounds like that could also come into play. So exciting stuff. I would ask people to get involved. Go to sky360.org, join the Discord, go to UAP Society Discord as well. So thanks everybody for being here. Have a great day. I have a video coming out tonight on my main channel on the ultra terrestrials. I already mentioned that. And then I'll take some cuts from this. Hopefully I have some time this afternoon and tomorrow to put out a video about Avi's response. So again, thanks for your time, Richard. Thanks for everybody in the audience.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thanks for your efforts.
Definitely. And anybody in the future watching this, go ahead, leave comments. We'll answer back. And if you have questions for Richard, I can pass them forward, or you can ask him on the Discord. So take care, everybody.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye, Chris.